Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are skipping the noise and jumping straight into the core of the case you sent us. It's a fascinating one. It's an investigation that really forced the financial world to rethink how it tracks sophisticated crime.
It did. Today, we're not looking at what was obviously stolen, the smoking gun. We're looking at what was perfectly erased. This material, it really gets into a unique challenge in digital security. Finding evidence when the crime was designed to leave a flawless, intentional void.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, to unpack this idea of zero-point evidence, the signature that only exists because something is missing too cleanly. We want to get into the mindset, right? The kind of thinking you need to solve a problem that, by its very definition, shouldn't have a solution.
Exactly. So to set the stage, we start with a woman named Elif Aksoy. She's an internal auditor at a major fintech firm, and she discovers something strange. A transfer for 12 million Turkish lira was prepared, fully approved, and then immediately canceled.
Okay, but a canceled transfer, that's normal business.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. The nightmare was what happened next.
That's the thing. When they went to audit the systems, there were zero traces of that cancellation. None. No log entry confirming it, no required digital signature, no human activity link. It was, and this is how the source described it, like the transfer was created and undone by a ghost. A system-compliant ghost that left a perfect vacuum.
And this is where the investigator, Nate Kane, he steps in. The sources paint this picture of him, right? He's not your typical forensics guy at all. He specializes in these cases that everyone else dismisses as just a system glitch because things disappeared too cleanly. So what's his starting point when he looks at just perfect blank space?
Well, his first move is to dismiss the protocols immediately. He knows that in high-stakes environments, the protocols are often the easiest way for a criminal to hide.
A kind of camouflage.
The best kind. So he bypasses them and looks at the raw data structure. He's not even interested in the 12 million TL transfer. He's looking for the expectation of a data point that just wasn't there.
So he's not hunting for a mistake that was made. He's looking for the meticulous effort it took to make sure no mistake was logged.
Precisely. His core insight was that the missing cancellation data, that wasn't a system oversight. It was an intentional choice by a human. He argued, systems make mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. But that level of deliberate blank space, that's a signature.
Wow. I think that's an incredibly powerful concept, especially today. We're all constantly sifting through noise alerts, metrics, just this overwhelming amount of information. But if you're looking for a signature of intelligence, sometimes the most intelligent thing a criminal can do is just be silent. The void becomes the loudest signal.
It forces you to interrogate the absence. What did the perpetrator know that allowed them to create that void? And that question, it immediately led Kane to the first concrete clue, a clue that everyone else had already filtered out as totally irrelevant.
The critical overlook. Okay, let's talk about that. Reading the unchecked data.
So the first thing Kane focused on, it wasn't a security log, it was a resource log. He found a tiny, highly localized CPU temperature spike at exactly 17.43. Mert, the security chief, he just blew it off, said it was just performance monitoring, standard office stuff.
But that's where Kane's whole philosophy comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
He believes that nothing is unimportant, especially the things no one checks.
Right.
Why would a tiny dismissed temperature spike suddenly become the most important piece of evidence?
Because it wasn't a gradual spike, like you'd see with normal system load. It was a sharp, focused burst of activity. That suggests the system was being used, or maybe abused, for a very short, non-standard procedure. To Kane, this data point was the most truthful thing they had, precisely because no one thought to erase it.
And this is the pivot, right? Where the digital clue connects to a physical event.
Right. They cross-referenced the 17.43 CPU spike with the building's physical access logs. And what do you think they found? At the exact same minute as a temperature spike, Elif Aksoy's ID card was used to enter the executive floor, a highly restricted area.
Wait, but Elif was in the security room, starting this whole audit, so her credentials were stolen and used at that exact moment. How?
Kane figured it had to be NFC cloning, but the social engineering aspect, it's chilling. Elif remembered an elevator ride earlier that day. A colleague, seemingly harmless, stood unusually close, apologized for it. That tiny window was all they needed to skim her credentials.
That's deeply unsettling. Just using the normal chaos of a crowded office elevator to steal her identity, knowing no one would think twice about it.
And that leads to this crucial detail about the disguise. The person was wearing the auditor's digital identity, sure, but they also needed a physical mask. The source confirms the perpetrator was disguised as a member of the audit team itself. When you think about about that choice. I mean, why an auditor?
Because auditors are invisible. They have a built-in reason to be anywhere. No one questions them.
Exactly. As Kane put it, audit teams are the best disguise. Everyone lets them in. No one interrogates them. It gave them completely unquestioned access to the whole system environment.
They didn't just steal an identity. They stole the cloak of institutional trust itself.
A critical distinction. So now they've confirmed the clone, the intrusion, but they still don't know who is behind the mask. The investigation then shifted to physical evidence left behind in a dark, secured audit room. A USB device glowing with an infinity symbol and this note: burn someone to save yourself.
That feels like a classic misdirection. I mean, the flashy USB, the cryptic note, seems designed to make them chase some disparate outsider, maybe even frame Elif.
And this is where Kane bypasses the protocols again. This time, the protocol of dramatic evidence. He just ignored the note. He ignored the USB's contents, didn't even plug it in. Instead, he focused on a microscopic detail: a tiny, worn scratch mark near the base of the device.
What could that scratch possibly tell him that the note couldn't?
It told him this wasn't a one-time thing. That level of wear suggested it was carried daily, probably on a keychain, right? Bumping up against keys and coins. It completely changed the profile from a temporary intruder to a permanent insider.
Wow. That one tiny scratch proves the perpetrator belonged there. That insight, it completely recalibrates the whole search, doesn't it?
It really raises the tension. The person had the tenure, the access, and the skill to pull this off. So Kane didn't ask for a criminal profile. He asked for names. Specifically, anyone who was uncomfortably close today, looks harmless tomorrow, and belongs here forever.
The essential overlooked employee. So who was it?
The profile pointed to one person, the system administrator, Arda, and the details that came out next. They just solidified this profile of a philosophical criminal. Arda wasn't just good with tech, he was obsessed with paradox puzzles, infinite loops, and, well, tellingly, anti-logging scripts.
Yeah.
He saw audit trails as messy things that needed cleaning up.
And he had the perfect cover. The sources say he had actually pitched a project to the firm to erase background noise from audit trails for clarity.
His job was literally to eliminate data noise, which gave him the technical excuse and the mandate to build the exact kind of scripts he needed for this attack. He had this deep, almost intellectual commitment to making systems look perfect and empty.
That's a motive wrapped inside a job description. So when they checked his workstation, what did they find?
The clues were small but telling. A warm keyboard, so recent frantic activity, a half-full cold coffee cup, and a terminal screen displaying an unfinished command, a very technical script command that required elevated privileges. He wasn't just checking emails, he was finalizing something critical.
So we have the insider, Arda, we have the method, the NFC clone, and the test run, that 12 million TL transfer that vanished. But if the test was successful, why was he still at his desk? Why risk exposure after pulling it off?
Because the 12 million wasn't the target. It was just the final calibration, the final check of his erasure mechanism. He needed to be absolutely sure the zero-point perfection would work under real operational load.
That's a terrifying level of efficiency.
Yeah.
He ran a live test, knowing that if the security team hadn't been looking for that ghost signature, they never would have even known it happened.
And the real silent disaster was set for 9:00 a.m. the next morning. The actual target wasn't 12 million TL. It was a scheduled, automated transfer for 120 million TL, 10 times the test amount. And it was all designed to run using the now perfected, cloned auditor credentials. And then, poof, the logs would self-delete on completion, a truly clean theft.
They had less than a business day to stop a crime that was engineered to erase itself. The pressure must have been immense.
It was a literal ticking clock. Kane was completely focused on the timing. He said, the smartest crime isn't the one you can't solve, it's the one you solve 30 seconds too late. We're not doing late. They had to build a trap that was just as sophisticated as the crime itself.
Okay, so how do you catch a system admin who can erase his own tracks?
Yeah.
Someone who knows the logs better than anyone else in the building. What was the reverse trap?
They moved fast. First, they isolated the scheduled 120 million TL job. They didn't cancel it, that would have tipped Arda off. They essentially put the job in escrow, froze the transfer pipeline using a very specific kernel flag.
So they created a timeout without him even knowing.
Exactly. Then they built the trap. It was a technical and psychological masterpiece. They deployed a customized shadow log system. But a simple shadow log would be too obvious. Theirs was designed to look empty. flawless. But it would only populate and display a message if it was queried with a unique, non-standard parameter.
A trigger that only the criminal would use.
The ultimate personalized trap. And given Arda's obsession with paradoxes and infinite systems, they chose his favorite symbol, the infinity icon, the Shawnee symbol. They knew he'd check his work remotely at the last second. They gambled that he would use his own preferred symbol in his query to confirm the perfection of his loop.
So what happened in those final minutes?
8:59 a.m. 1 minute before the transfer was set to execute. Arda accesses the system remotely. He's looking for his perfect blank audit trail. He runs his query using that infinity symbol. But instead of the void he expected, the system prints a single custom message right back to his screen. You rushed 0, I don't.
And that was it. Security intercepted his session right then. It wasn't solved by tracking the money that vanished, but by tracking the heat spike, the tiny scratch, and the one philosophical weakness he had, his need to confirm his own perfection.
The case really stands as a landmark because they completely shifted the focus. They stopped asking, who stole the money? And started asking a much deeper question. What was the blank space trying to tell us?
This deep dive gives us, I think, some really tactical knowledge. First, a sophisticated criminal's signature isn't always data residue. Sometimes it's the intentional absence of data. That's where the real high-level stuff hides. Second, those overlooked technical details, like a minor CPU temperature spike. They're often gold mines of truth because the perpetrator didn't think they were important enough to erase.
And finally, it just underscores the danger of the harmless insider. The person whose role is essential, whose presence you take for granted, and who uses their system knowledge not for defense, but for the perfect crime.
And as we close, let's leave you with this final provocative thought. Arda's goal was the perfect digital crime, right? One so clean it would just be written off as a system error. This raises a huge question for auditing today. If truly perfect digital crimes are designed to be undetectable, how many of the zero-point incidents we see, the strange glitches, the temporary system errors, are actually sophisticated crimes that we just lack the framework to even see?
What other blank spaces are we missing right now?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for the Deep Dive.